The Grand Council chamber was tense as the Assyrian and human delegations faced each other across the massive obsidian table. The Assyrians, towering crystalline beings with shimmering, physiqued exoskeletons, pulsed with anxiety. Their leader, High Consul HYZ, vibrated slightly as he addressed the human envoy. The demands of your species are unacceptable. We will not bow to the whims of an inferior race. The human envoy, a calm and composed figure named Ambassador Li, leaned back in his chair and sighed. Look, High Consul, all we're asking for is a peaceful resolution. This doesn't need to end in conflict. Surely there's a middle ground we can find. There is no compromise with those who defy the purity of Aryan will, HYZ declared, his crystalline voice resonating through the chamber. Your species is a blight upon the stars, a primitive force that must be eradicated for the good of the galaxy. Ambassador Li raised an eyebrow and nodded slightly. Well, if that's how you want to play it, he turned to his aides, who had been standing silently behind him. Give me a moment with my team. The human delegation huddled together, speaking in low tones. The Assyrians watched with a mixture of curiosity and disdain, their crystalline bodies refracting the dim light of the chamber in iridescent patterns. After a few moments, Ambassador Li straightened up and returned to the table. So just to be clear, Li began, his voice cool, you're officially declaring war on humanity. Total war, no rules, no quarter? Yes, HYZ responded, his voice ringing with certainty. Your kind will be purged from the galaxy, your worlds reduced to ash. There will be no mercy. Aha, Li muttered as he fiddled with a sleek black device in his hand. And you rejecting any sort of galactic treaties or conventions regarding warfare? You know, like the Zeller Accords or the Terran Protocols? Such things are meaningless, HYZ spat. The very idea of rules in war is a human weakness. We do not recognize them. Got it, Li replied, his finger hovering over the device. So we're definitely doing this, no takebacks. Yes, human, HYZ hissed, his crystalline structure glowing with righteous fury. Your kind will be exterminated. Li smiled, a calm, almost serene smile, and pressed the button on his device. Well, you've just made my day. The chamber filled with a low hum as a holographic display flickered to life above the human delegation. It showed a series of star systems, each one labeled with ominous red symbols. So, here's the deal, Li began casually. We've been waiting for someone to give us the green light on this. In about 5 minutes, a quarter of your worlds are going to be hit with something we've been working on for a while. Something new, something special. What is this? HYZ stammered, his crystalline form dimming slightly. Oh, just a little something we cooked up in the labs, Li said with a shrug. We're talking bioweapons tailored specifically to your biology. And let's not forget the nanoweapons, you know, the kind that dissolve entire ecosystems. We've got those too. The Assyrian delegation recoiled in horror, their crystalline forms pulsing with alarm. You lie? This is madness. Madness? Li chuckled. Maybe, but it's effective. We've also got a few prizes in store for your military installations. Ever heard of zero-point implosion devices? They're quite thorough. HYZ's form flickered with panic. You cannot do this. It's impossible. No species has that kind of capability. Well, we do, Li replied, his tone growing more serious. And unless you want to see your worlds turned into lifeless rocks, I suggest you rethink your position. The Assyrians were silent, their crystalline bodies quivering with fear. After a long pause, HYZ spoke, his voice barely more than a whisper. What are your terms? Unconditional surrender, Li said without hesitation. Effective immediately. You'll sign over all military assets, relinquish control of your star systems, and acknowledge humanity as the supreme authority in this sector of the galaxy. No negotiations, no exceptions. This cannot be, HYZ stammered, his form dimming further. There must be some assurance that you will honor this agreement. Li shrugged again. No guarantees, except that if you don't agree, you'll find out exactly how serious we are. You've got 2 minutes to decide. The Assyrian delegation huddled together, their crystalline forms shimmering with indecision. Finally, HYZ turned back to Lee, his voice defeated. We accept your terms. Good choice, Lee said with a nod. He handed the device to HYZ. Sign here, here, and here. And make sure your colleagues do the same. One by one, the Assyrians signed, their movements slow and resigned. As the last signature was added, Lee retrieved the device and smiled again. Pleasure doing business with you. Now, if you'll excuse us, we've got some worlds to secure. As the Assyrians were escorted out of the chamber, their heads hung low in defeat, Lee turned to his aides, a broad grin on his face. I can't believe they fell for it. Nova bombs and zero-point devices, they really think we'd go that far? Guess they don't know us as well as they thought. One of the aides replied with a chuckle, so, what's next? Lee shrugged, still smiling. Next, we make sure they stay in line. After all, we've got a reputation to uphold. And who knows? Maybe someday we'll actually develop some of those toys we talked about, just in case. As the Assyrian delegation left the chamber, their forms dim and defeated, Ambassador Lee remained standing, his confident smile lingering as he watched them go. The doors closed with a soft hiss, and the atmosphere in the room shifted from tense anticipation to a sort of victorious relief. The human delegation began to relax, some chuckling quietly, others exchanging relieved glances. That went better than expected, one of the aides remarked, adjusting his uniform. Lee nodded, still staring at the door. Yeah, they took the bait, hook, line, and sinker. But let's not get too comfortable. We just bought ourselves time, nothing more. One of the younger diplomats, a woman with sharp eyes and a calculating mind, stepped forward. Do you think they'll try anything? Retaliate in some way once they realize we don't actually have those weapons? Lee turned to her, his smile fading slightly as he considered the possibility. They are not stupid. They'll figure it out eventually. But the important thing is we've got them on their heels now. They are scared, and scared people make mistakes. Another aide, an older man with years of experience in interstellar diplomacy, stepped forward. But what happens when they do realize it was a bluff? We can't keep this charade up forever. They'll come back, and when they do, they'll come with real firepower. Lee finally moved away from the table, walking toward the massive viewports that looked out into the cold expanse of space. The stars glittered like distant promises, each one a reminder of the vast unknown that humanity had only begun to explore. We'll deal with that when the time comes, Lee said after a long pause. For now, we need to solidify our position. We've got a temporary advantage, and we need to make the most of it. What's the plan, then? Asked the young diplomat. Lee turned back to face his team, his expression now one of grim determination. We start building. The Assyrians will need time to recover from this shock. They won't be ready for a real fight anytime soon. We use that time to expand our alliances, strengthen our military, and most importantly, actually develop some of those weapons we just bluffed about. The older aide frowned. Nova bombs, zero-point implosion devices, that's not something we can just whip up overnight. I know, Lee replied, his voice calm but resolute. But we've got some of the best minds in the galaxy. If anyone can figure it out, it's us. And if we can't, well, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. The young diplomat looked worried. And what about the Assyrians? They're going to be watching us closely now. If we start mobilizing too aggressively, they might see it as a provocation. Lee smiled faintly. That's why we need to be smart about it. We don't make it obvious. We work in the shadows, build alliances with other species who are just as wary of the Assyrians as we are. We use every diplomatic, economic, and technological tool at our disposal to ensure that when the Assyrians do come back, we'll be ready. The room fell silent as Lee's words sank in. The gravity of the situation was clear to everyone present. This was a pivotal moment in human history, a chance to secure humanity's place in the galaxy, but also a potential tipping point into a war they might not be able to win. After a long pause, the older aide nodded slowly. You're right. We need to be proactive. If we play this right, we might not just survive, we might thrive. Lee nodded, his expression hardening with resolve. Exactly. The Assyrians think they've seen what humanity is capable of, but they have no idea what we can really do when our backs are against the wall. The young diplomat stepped forward, her eyes shining with determination. What do you need from us, sir? Lee turned to her, his smile returning, but this time it was one of camaraderie, not just confidence. We need to get in touch with our allies, quietly. Start laying the groundwork for a coalition. We're going to need every advantage we can get. And the weapons? Asked the older aide. I'll speak with the Defense Council, Lee said. We'll get the best scientists working on it. It won't be easy, and it might take time, but we've got to try. As the aides began to file out of the room, each heading to their respective tasks, Lee stayed behind, once again staring out at the stars. The vastness of space had always been a source of wonder for him, but now it felt different, more ominous, more urgent. He knew that the real test was yet to come. The Assyrians might be licking their wounds now, but they wouldn't stay down forever. When they returned, they would come with the full force of their anger and fear, and humanity would have to be ready. But for now, they had a window of opportunity, a chance to turn the tide, to prepare for the inevitable conflict that loomed on the horizon. Lee took a deep breath, steeling himself for the challenges ahead. Time to show them what humans are really made of, he muttered to himself, and with that, he turned away from the viewports and walked out of the chamber, ready to lead humanity into the unknown, whatever it might bring.